What's happening, everybody? It is Trey here. I'm joined again by my dad, Sean, and today we are up to another edition of Reactions to the Classics in our journey of listening to the Beatles in chronological order. We are up to the Magical Mystery Tour review. This is the first time we've listened to this record, and if this is your first time stopping by here at the channel, we appreciate it. Y'all here, Reactions to the Classics. We take a look back at some of the most classic records of all time and do a detailed track-by-track review of them, give our first-time listen thoughts of them. And so if that sounds like something interesting to you, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. And if you want to link up with us more, you can support us at our Patreon page. We got exclusive content there, as well as our Facebook group where we have some good musical discussion as well with the community here. But all that to say, let's just jump into this thing.
All right, Trevor, this includes the soundtrack to the film of the same name. It was released in the UK in December of 1967, in the US at late November 1967. In the UK, it's just an EP. In the US, it's a full LP. And the LP in the US went to #1, was Grammy nominated for Record of the Year. In the first 3 weeks it was out, sold over $8 million worth of records, which back in 1967, that is a lot of records.
Yeah.
It was a record, no pun intended, at the time.
After the recording of Sgt. Pepper's, the Beatles wanted to continue the psychedelic theme that record really put forth on display and make a movie. And so they came up with this idea, the Magical Mystery Tour, recorded a song for that as they were doing songs for their Yellow Submarine film as well. In this time too, you also have the huge Our World performance where they performed All You Need Is Love to 400 million people in 25 different countries. So a lot of different things coming on along here, and then unfortunately some tragedy strikes.
Yeah, Trey, unfortunately Brian Epstein, their manager, passed away during this time, but the Beatles had to push on, mainly spurred by McCartney to push on with this project in particular. Just like before, the American side of things had, on side A, it has the soundtrack to Magical Mystery Tour. Side B has what's going to become a single, Hellogoodbye, and then the A and B sides of previous singles, which the Beatles were not thrilled about at all. They did not want those released on albums. That was kind of the way they did things back then. They believed singles were singles and you didn't have to pay for them twice on an album. But in America, EPs were really not a big thing. In England they were, but in America not at all. So Capitol made a decision of making it into an LP. And Trey, really, you could argue this is the only time ever where Capitol rearranging what the UK versions did actually was a positive.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Well, Trey, we're up to the title track, Magical Mystery Tour, is written by McCartney. This covers the premise of sort of the whole album, the Magical Mystery Tour. They're going on a bus, they're going around these magical mystery tours, and that's kind of what the song's about. I like it. It's got a psychedelic feel to it.
I'm with you, Sean. I thought this was a tremendous way to start the album. It just set the tone of it's going to be a fun, little whimsical journey here. So I really enjoyed this one and liked how it both employed McCartney and Lennon in here with the backing vocals, and yeah, it was just a fun track to start us off.
Yeah, and it sounds very familiar to Sgt. Pepper's, this song in particular, because they started recording this less than a week after they finished Sgt. Pepper, so in this song in particular, you'll notice that.
It takes us to The Fool on the Hill. This is written by McCartney, and this is talking about a guy who everybody thinks is a fool, but he's actually wise. And this one was great because I thought it just had a nice somber tone to it, a nice way of just showing your emotions, and really got you feeling for the main character in this track.
Yeah, Trey, I really like this one. I thought it was a tremendous vocal performance by McCartney. Sets a great tone. Even Lennon liked it. He said in 1980, now that's a Paul track, a complete lyric, shows he's capable of it.
I thought it did good, kind of going from light to dark. Like the chorus itself is a little dark, the fool on the hill, and then it kind of goes up into more vibrant, playful tones towards the end there. So I thought, as always, the Beatles did a great job here evoking an emotion.
Next up is Flying. It's actually an instrumental track. All four of the Beatles received songwriting credit for this. On this track, it's very similar to 12-bar Original, which was the last instrumental they did in 1965, based on the classic 12-bar blues chord progression. In this thing, Lennon plays the main theme on a mellotron, accompanied by McCartney and Harrison, who are both on guitars. Later, McCartney adds a bass overdub. And Ringo is on maracas and drums. All four Beatles also sing this little melody in there without lyrics that you'll kind of hear throughout. But for me, it's good. It's an instrumental. It fits in nicely with the tone of the album.
I'd agree.
Next up is Blue Jay Way, the lone Harrison written and sung track on this thing. He had went to Los Angeles in 1967 with his wife, Pattie Boyd, and a couple Beatles aides to meet with Derek Taylor, a former press officer for the Beatles and now publicist for the Beach Boys and the Byrds. They were going to meet at this house on Blue Jay Way, the house that he's staying in. It was foggy. It was nighttime. He told Derek how to get there. He was getting tired. They'd just flown in. There was a organ in the house. He decided to sit down and start writing on it while he was waiting for him, and that's what this song is about. This trip in particular, Trey, shaped the Beatles from here on in because they went up to San Francisco to Haight-Ashbury, where the hippie movement was in full run, and Harrison expected he would see a bunch of people on LSD whose minds were open like the Beatles felt that they were, and that they'd be doing all kinds of progressive things. Instead, he found people who he felt were out of touch and kind of bums.
Yeah.
It really discouraged him. He goes back to London. He tells Lennon 2 days later, they denounce LSD, say that they're going to push into meditation.
To me, this was Harrison's version of Tomorrow Never Knows. I think just it almost sounded like he had some backwards guitar effects in
It's
here.
heavily produced. You'll hear it. Yeah.
And I just think that the way his voice was kind of droning on a little bit, along with, just kind of the funky, warped instruments in the background, that really stood out to me. Just the way he sang, please don't. Like, that's the part of the song to me that really stood out. And this was one of my favorite Harrison tracks. I put it right up there with Taxman, just for how unique it was.
Yeah, I liked it. I wouldn't put it up there with Taxman, Trey, but I liked it. This one really grew on me. It's, like I said, heavily produced, but it is an excellent track.
Then that takes us to the McCartney-led track, Your Mother Should Know. And, if you remember back to Please Please Me, there's a song in there called The Taste of Honey. Well, this line comes from that, that play, A Taste of Honey. And McCartney ended up writing this tune for the film Magical Mystery Tour, where they're coming down the staircase and their white tuxedos.
Yes. For me, this is a really catchy song. There's not a lot to it lyrically. There doesn't have to be on a lot of these things because Paul and John are both such gifted vocalists. This is a middle of the road song for this album, but I do like it.
As you said, it's catchy. It's more upbeat, especially coming after George's song Blue Jay Way here. So I appreciated it for that, and it gets stuck in your head.
Well, next up is I Am The Walrus, written by Lennon, sung by Lennon. It becomes the B-side to Hellogoodbye. It's over 4.5 minutes long. It's actually 3 uncompleted Lennon songs put into one. The first song was inspired by hearing a police siren at his home. Lennon wrote the lyrics, Mr. City Policeman, to the rhythm and melody of the siren. The second idea was a short rhyme about Lennon sitting amidst his garden, while the third was a nonsense lyric about sitting on a cornflake.
The final piece of the song came together when Lennon's friend and fellow member of the Quarrymen, Pete Shotton, visited. Pete was telling him that he received a letter from a pupil at his old school that a teacher was having their class analyze Beatles lyrics. And so Lennon essentially told Shotton, well, I'm going to give them something to analyze, let's see what they do with this. Essentially, there's a bunch of nonsense lyrics in here just to, say, hey, don't take us, this is my interpretation, don't take us too seriously all the time. These lyrics don't necessarily mean, everything, have some deep meaning every, single time.
It is one of the catchiest songs I've heard of Lennon. It's so nonsensical and ridiculous that you gotta love it.
Yeah, I love the portion where it's just fun, just you hear the bells ringing. It's this madness going all around, and, just the I am the Eggman, they are the Eggman, I am the Walrus, and the cuckoo cuckoo. Like, you can't help but not want to sing along to this and just have a little fun with it.
Next up, we start the B-side, Hellogoodbye, written by McCartney. It was a non-album single in the UK in November 1967. Reaches #1 everywhere. This is the first single since Brian Epstein had passed away. The concept of this is duality. One of the Beatles' aides, Alistair Taylor, was over at McCartney's house, said, hey, how do you write a song? He said, hey, come in here. They sat down at the harmonium. He says, whatever I say, you say the opposite. And the completed song includes a coda that was unfinished when they went into the recording studio.
Yeah,
the Beatles.
Yeah.
The Beatles just improvised it there, and it is very fun. That's a good word for it. An interesting thing here, I Am The Walrus ends up being the B-side to this, as I mentioned in the last track. Lennon had a huge problem with this. He was really pushing Martin and McCartney to go with I Am The Walrus. They didn't. He got outvoted. He was upset about it. He hated Hellogoodbye. This was the start of him really withdrawing and McCartney taking the lead.
Yeah, and Lennon said in 1980 that, yeah, that's another Paul track. You can smell it a mile away. Wasn't very good. And there was also in the original a short guitar solo by Harrison that got cut. Many think that that also caused a rift between them. So here, you know, those fractures are starting to widen.
One song, they're starting to widen. I think it's a great song to try. I really like it.
Yeah, it's simple, you know, lyrically, but it was another catchy track on here. Just something so simple as the duality of, you know, hello, goodbye, yes, no, just all these opposite words. And I think Paul has a tremendous vocal performance here and just a way to write a beautiful melody to just some fun music in the background here, and you know, very, very solid track. Next up, we got Strawberry Fields Forever, a Lennon-led track, and this was ranked number 76 on Rolling Stone's Top 500 Songs of All Time. This was released in February of '67 as a double A side for Penny Lane, which is our next track, during the Sgt. Pepper sessions. Lennon wrote this in Spain while he was filming How I Won the War.
This song took 55 hours to record, and it's recorded over a 5-week span at different intervals, so that is amazing. But here's why. It had 3 distinct versions. Each one was in a different structure, key, and tempo. The release version has a combination of take 7, which was lighter, and take 26, which they said was intense and scored. Lennon wanted to combine both of them. So Martin and Emmerich only had a pair of editing scissors, 2 tape machines, and a Verispeed control. Emmerich compensated for the differences in key and speed by increasing the speed of the first version, decreasing the speed of the second. This is why it sounds so unique. The pitch shifting and joining the versions gave Lennon's voice that otherworldly kind of swimming quality. There is a couple false endings. Martin put them in there because when they were trying to merge the 2 versions together, there were a little bit of issues with the percussion, so you just have 2 false endings. As for the song itself, Trey, I love it. It's tremendous. I can imagine listening to this in 1967 and going, I don't know what I think of this. It is an awesome song. It has got so many effects in there. Lennon sounds tremendous. The swimming quality of his voice that I mentioned earlier is so evident, and it sticks in your head.
Yeah, I mean, this very well might be my favorite Lennon track to date. Definitely, you know, up there with one of my 3 favorite Beatles songs that we've heard thus far. I just think that Lennon really puts himself out here on this track, talking about no one is living in my tree. You gotta, you know, remember and put yourself in his position. His home life wasn't great growing up. No mother and father in the home, living with his aunt. You know, going through talking just about some philosophical concepts. Living is easy with eyes closed, misunderstanding all you see. I just adore that line because, you know, if you just shut yourself off from the world, it's easy to live if you're just in ignorance. I think, and the song just kind of is surreal the way the chorus goes, and it almost is like you're rushing down when it's like, let me take you down. Just like what you were talking about, Sean, how they had to split the 2 takes together. Their stuff sped up, slowed down, and that just, it meshes perfectly with the lyrics and the tone that Lennon and the boys wanted to put forward.
I think it's got to be one of the top 10 songs of all time that when you hear 1 second of it, you know exactly what it is, and that's the mark of a great song.
Then that takes us to Penny Lane, and this is written by McCartney. This is the flip side to the Strawberry Fields Forever single, and just like Strawberry Fields was talking about Lennon's childhood, this is going to talk about McCartney's.
Penny Lane that he is really referring to mainly is a bus terminal that him and John would frequent. Get to go to places. There's a barbershop, there's a fire station a half mile down the road. It's all the stuff they talk about in here. He wrote it kind of as a response to Strawberry Fields Forever. That was Lennon's side of childhood. Penny Lane is his side of childhood. The thing about Penny Lane is it doesn't sound nearly as produced or complicated as Strawberry Fields Forever, but it actually is. It's 4-track. Paul recorded all these different piano versions, from a banjo type piano to a classic piano to a harmonium, and put those on 1 track. I actually love this song. I put it a tick ahead of Strawberry Fields Forever. I know you disagree with that. I think to each his own. I love them both, but that's a mark of how great, for me, this song is.
Yeah, and lyrically, this talks about, it's almost like it's a summer day, you know, beneath the blue skies, but it's also raining because firemen are going down in the pouring rain.
Yeah, it
is a little bit surreal here as well. The story and imagery that Paul tells here is, I can picture just everything that he's saying going on in my head.
Yeah, I can picture the fire station, the banker, the
barber
shop, and this song makes me smile, I guess is the most corny, cliched way of putting it, but when I hear it, it's just like, yeah, I love it.
And it's cool because all of these different characters end up like kind of meeting at the end, and it all just meshes together as a beautiful story.
Next, we're up to Baby You're a Rich Man, written by Lennon, sung by Lennon. It ends up being the B-side to All You Need Is Love. Originated from an unfinished song by Lennon called One of the Beautiful People, which Paul added the chorus in a little bit too. The song was recorded and mixed at Olympic Recording Studios, which makes it the first Beatles song totally completed outside of Abbey Road. This is where the Rolling Stones recorded. Mick Jagger was actually at this session, which lasted 6 hours.
Yeah, and Lennon began writing this after the 14-hour Technicolor Festival. This was a key event. Look back historically in the UK counterculture movement.
Lennon was kind of saying that everybody's rich. You're rich. And shut up. You're rich with where you're at. It's not about money. It's incredibly catchy. One of my favorites on this album. It's really just a theme that they've revisited over the last few albums against consumerism and material wealth.
Yeah, exactly. And again, that's a good message here, as we have on the last track, our next song as well. Just a good message that everybody can get behind. And though this was probably my least favorite on the B-side, that just shows you how stacked this B-side is, because this song is excellent. A nice hidden gem in here that might not get as much popularity airplay as some of the other tracks on this record, but it's still fantastic nonetheless.
Finally, we're up to All You Need Is Love, written by Lennon, sung by Lennon. It's a non-album single released in July of 1967. This is Britain's contribution to the television show Our World, put to 25 countries, 400 million people. The first time they had a satellite link this large, went to #1 all over the world. They told the Beatles to keep the lyrics simple, Trey, which they did because of the language differences.
Yeah.
They actually didn't start writing the song until 11 days before they had to perform it, which is crazy. They decided the day before they performed it, it was going to be their next single. And typical of the Beatles, and this time they did 33 takes of having a background recording of this. They did not go in there and do it all live.
No, and here you have Martin directing an orchestra, a little throwback to A Day in the Life. You have, it starts with a portion of the French national anthem. The end portion, a really cool throwback where the chorus does She Loves You.
Epstein calls it their greatest moment, the peak of their power. Lennon was said to be very nervous about doing this, which you can only imagine in front of 400 million people live. He went back in the next day and actually re-recorded the vocal, applied ADT to it. It was down to this song or Your Mother Should Know.
Yeah, think of how different that would have been. I think that this message is one of the reasons that the Beatles' music has gone throughout all generations, is because it's something that all generations can relate to. This is a message that I think people in our world today in 2019 can still relate to, and thus,
big time.
Even though this thing is over 50 years old, it still is as relevant today as it was in '67, because everybody wants that peace, that love in the world, and this just sums it up in a nice anthem-like, beautiful song format.
I agree 100%. It's a timeless anthem, to use your words, and the lyrics are very simple, like they were supposed to be, but the message is tremendous, and I would imagine will be timeless from here on in. Well, now we're at the point, favorite tracks.
Well, for me, Strawberry Fields has got to be the top one on this, and then All You Need Is Love, a close second. Blue Jay Way for my boy George. I just thought that was pretty awesome, and I mean the entire B-side was just filled with tremendous tracks.
Yeah, I like Penny Lane the best.
Of course.
Strawberry Fields Forever, All You Need Is Love. And speaking of the B-side, we're a long ways through the catalog now. I will say that I think the B-side of this album, and I realized it wasn't what the Beatles wanted.
Yeah.
It should be this way because it's a combination of things, but I think the B-side is as strong of a side of any album we've listened to so far.
Oh, I would agree with that too.
On all that, Trey, on that note, what do you give this thing?
Well, for me, I'm going to be pretty high on this thing. This is yet another record. This is 4 in a row that's just going to be a real high on our scale. I'm going to 9.5 out of 10 on this. This was a very enjoyable record. There wasn't a song on here that I disliked. I thought every track was good to phenomenal. So 9.5 for me.
I'm going to be right there with you, 9.5. I wavered from a 9.25 to a 9.5. But like I said, this B-side is so tremendous, it's hard to go anything below that.
As it kind of closes out their psychedelic era,
Correct.
I think this was quite the way to go out with it, and just a record I'll be revisiting quite a bit. And we'd love to know your thoughts on this record. Let us know, comment below your favorite track on Magical Mystery Tour. As always, Sean, appreciate all the research. We'll be back with the White Album super video. Strap in for that. That one's going to be fun. 30 songs or so of goodness. And as I said before, y'all, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button to not miss any of the uploads we have. And until next time, happy listening, my friends, and we will see ya.